Thank you, Dr. Pittman. Next up, we have Dr. Tyler Baumen. He's a graduate of Iowa State University, class of 2016. Serves as a herd veterinarian for the Maschhoffs. Resides in Eldora, Iowa, with his wife Casey and 3 boys. Raised some cattle, sheep, horses, and an assortment of poultry. So with that, we appreciate his agreement to be part of this panel and look forward to your information here as well.
For the third time, which button? All right. Should be easy. All right. I haven't seen too many people leave with me coming up, so appreciate your patience and getting through this day. I'm going to caveat, I'm going to do a little bit of a right turn here, because as I was putting these together, one piece I really missed out in encapsulating the successes that we have in the Maschhoffs with living with PRRS is the people piece. And so we were on some training this morning, and I just started really reflecting that. It was a big miss on my part. I'm going to present on some detailed stuff, some structured stuff, and a lot of that, our successes with it, is because of the team that we have, the consistency, and so I hope I can highlight that piece as we go through this, but certainly shouldn't be lost that our successes are really based on our commitment and consistency with the people. So kind of here's the agenda here on how I'm going to get through this presentation. So first thing is just kind of understand where our numbers are at, knowing what we have in breed to wean side as well as the wean to market. Then the next piece we'll move into what do we do with that data, the benchmarking, how do we compare to the data with what we've done and try to measure it, and then some of the actions. So hopefully there'll be some takeaways here for you that you can take back and maybe consider doing within your systems or organizations. So we'll start with breed to wean. So in the Maschhoffs, we use a program called Pig Nose, be similar like a Pig Champ, for those that be familiar. A great tool for us, a lot of real-time data, tons of data, and for us, it's real-time. So for those that know my CEO, Jay Miller, one thing that he hates is when you come to a meeting and say, it just feels right, or I got a good feeling about, this, without any data behind it. It just drives him up the wall. He's in the back corner here, so one thing that we always want to try to come with is the data, and this is just a breakdown. I did this one on aborts, and so the top bar graph on the right, this is broken across regions. We can see that obviously we had higher aborts in one region. The next graph down would be a breakdown of, all right, which farms? And I'm using abortions just kind of as a proxy for general information that you could find. You could do pre-wean mortality, time to first service, name the metric you want to measure, and you can get some really nice report outs. But in this case, we had a sow farm that's in PRRS closure, and this data is really fresh, started re-breaking. It looks like it's a different strain mutation, whatever the case is, but definitely stands out, calls your attention to it. So once we have that information, and Pete alluded to this, that we rely heavily on POMP, PRRS Outbreak Management Program with the ISU EPI team. And so they take a lot of that data. They take our records, and we utilize them for a number of things, but in this case, they can help analyze that vast amount of data for us. So we don't have the internal resources today, or I don't know if desire to ever have that kind of resource that takes the vast amount of data, puts it into a very user-friendly format, and gives you the information you need. The other piece on it is that you can compare yourself to the industry for those other systems or farms that are within the POMP database and see how you're benchmarking against other systems. So in this case, where we had the aborts, for our PRRS strains that we had, are we higher? In some of our cases, we had a lot more PRRS than others with a similar strain. Tons of variables that are included in that, but again, it gives you some kind of foundation of maybe areas to go focus on. This would be kind of what I've presented this a couple times. So this may be a couple years old now, but this is just kind of a way for us to look at it. So these would be all the PRRS statuses of farms, and so on the, I don't know what side that is, the left-hand side there, those would be farm names, and it would be on a timeline. And so each color and dot, they represent different things. There's a legend in the top there, but essentially, so I've highlighted some in the top two with the red. So in this case, we had 2 farms that were They broke with a lineage L1C.3, 131 RFLP, and the red phase is kind of that stage 1. And so as you're making changes, production changes or management changes, maybe we ran an antibiotic, maybe we changed our gilt exposure plan, right? You can start measuring that on how long you were within a certain stage. That'd be one thing. The other piece here is if you're making some bigger decisions on just trying to understand what's your break rate. So the sow farm there with the green box around it, this farm breaks a lot, right? So as we're starting to investigate, like, what do we need to do from a production plan or management plan on this, and Jeremy and Pete both alluded to it, maybe we just run this one, stage 1B, just run it positive due to the break rate and just get some stability. And that's what we're doing today, and this farm actually does extremely well from a production downstream. So again, it's another way to look at the data. It's user-friendly and allows you to make some more robust strategy decisions or some point-on decisions if you're in the heat of the moment. And this data, the Pomp team can push this out pretty quickly for you. Another thing we're doing, one thing that was mentioned was LVI versus MLV. And so we had a comparison done for different closure plans. So if you're doing 2 rounds of MLV, if you're doing MLV, LVI, or an LVI versus an MLV, where do we win? Again, tons of variables, but it starts getting you a foundation of information that you can try to start implementing in practice a little more regularly. One thing down in the bottom middle there, so that'd be time to baseline production. So that would be, there's a couple categories that we want to focus on, at least within Maschhoffs for PRRS closures. That would be baseline production and then time to stability. So when do they go negative again? For us, where we sell grade A carcasses, that would be our number 1 revenue. We want to get to baseline production in most cases as quick as possible. So what strategies out there can get us there? There's going to be exceptions where we want to get stability as quick as possible because maybe there's connections with other farms, maybe it's a multiplier, things of that. But that kind of information, knowing what can get you there quicker for your end goal could be really vital. So in this case, baseline production and the data that we had, if we LVI'd then went MLV'd, we saw a quicker return to baseline production. However, if we went from MLV to LVI, our time to stability was quicker than that. So just another way to continue to look at that information. One caveat, boy, that 5 minutes, so it's really quick there. One thing is that, keep in mind with the variation is that LVI is not LVI, and we hear LVI put out very loosely, but there's a lot of different definitions of what LVI is, and so we're trying to make a more concerted effort to be more structured with what our LVI is. We utilize some genomic copies as kind of baseline and then try to measure off that. So the bullets there in red, those are much lower. I think these are 690 copies versus the whatever that big number is. It's like Powerball number up there. All right, I'm going to skip over these for the sake of time here, but again, just some more definitions of that and then looking at lineages. So what do we do today based on that information? We talk about the LVI. We look at sow use for antibiotics, pigs, therapeutics to sows. That's becoming all the rage. A lot of information being put out there now on that. We look at increasing weanage when possible. So if you have a lot of aborts, utilize those holes in farrowing to get some time on your pigs. We look at timing of circovirus and PRRS vaccine in those pigs, trying to get stability. We don't want to vaccinate a sick pig, but sometimes it's worse to vaccinate them downstream when they're really sick. So we definitely look at that timing. And then really complex, but a really good tool for creating segregation with your transport would be a transport tier. So again, I can get into this. It'd take a whole day to go through it, but one place we're looking to invest in. We're going to talk about these red dots. This is my region. So it's Northwest Iowa. Lateral PRRS, as everyone's alluded to, it's just you're going to have to live with it. The green bars, as you were down in the bottom with the line graph here, the bottom line, the red line, is what we track for lateral breaks in finishing. In 2023, it was relatively low. Then the last 2 years, we've just been living live in with high number of breaks. The other thing is that continues to be late nursery, and we continually see a predominant L1C5. So one thing that we're doing is a lot more testing. I have a veteran team that is very routine with their testing. We do, anytime we're going to commingle nursery lots into a feeder pig site, those are going to get tested automatically. So there's just a more rigorous testing that we're doing to try to catch these. A lot of questions out there. Do you want a half dose versus full dose? Presented information, I think 3 years in a row that we've seen success with the full dose program in certain areas of the country, Northwest Iowa being predominant. The timing of breaks, how are you administering that sow farm? Is it split dose? Are you doing a combination at weaning, 3 weeks post-wean? Looking at the different lineages, the vet med spend that's going with that, stocking density, and then biosecurity, and the impacts that they can have. So again, here's just, I've presented this slide a couple times before, where we did half dose versus full dose, utilizing the ISU epi team as well, where we saw a benefit in the full dose compared to the half dose. And so in this case, we had about a 3.5% improvement in mortality. So I think this is one of my last slides here. So what are we doing here? Today, as I said, we're doing the full dose PRRS vaccination within western and central Iowa. Seasonally, and that'll be year-round. We are doing it seasonally in eastern Iowa where the pressure continues to grow. Another area that we continue to look at is our stocking density. So in the nursery phase, we'll typically double stock sites. We used to be a little more aggressive. We backed that off in key areas. So we went from a 3.3 square foot up to a 3.9 this past year. Younger thin downs, so we shaved off 2 weeks. Some of those were going at 6-7 weeks. So just getting them out of that nursery phase into the feeder pig phase a little bit quicker. And if we had PRRS breaks at time of the Circo booster or time of ileitis vaccination, we automatically went, once they stabilized, we rescue boosted those before clinical signs because we were finding PCV2 complications at time of marketing or ileitis breaks. And then the last thing, this is new this year for us. We're making a big push on the Wean to Market Biosecurity Initiative. The big difference on this one is that it's not just a blanket approach where it's like, all right, everyone, you got to adhere to your clean, dirty lines. All right, if you're going to render, you have your dedicated boots. The way we have it set up is it's site-specific for kind of the style of barns. So we're working with some key concepts of your clean, dirty lines that have physical benches or physical definition versus just tape on the floor. If there's opportunity to put up partitions to control the flow of traffic, so it's one-way flow, we're looking at that. How can we reduce crossover with rendering? Double-sided mortality boxes, or we're getting a lot of guys moving to composting here, or at least entertaining that idea. So really focusing on some of those key items and on the concepts that's specific to their site. And with this last year, so on our PRRS positive lots, since we enacted that, we had about a 4% improvement in grade A for PRRS breaks. So fiscal year 24 for us, definitely saw that big increase in PRRS breaks. This last year we saw it again, yet we came out looking a lot better with only with 4% less mortality. I think that's all I have. So thank you.